Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast with your host, Ryan Weimer. Today I have Mr. Corby Goade with me. Corby is a repeat guest, real estate investor, entrepreneur in Boise, Idaho. But most importantly, we're going to talk about travel hacking,
my favorite
traveling, the best thing in the world, right?
That's right.
Our personal favorites,
Yeah.
right? I've been waiting a long time to talk to you about this because traveling was truthfully one of the main reasons that I got into real estate in the first place. Can you tell me a little bit about how traveling came up for you? Was it something that was always kind of your guiding compass with real estate, or did it come along the way?
They kind of came hand in hand. I think real estate is just fun all on its own. I love doing real estate stuff, but the freedom that it provides to do the other stuff is super cool. And when Heather and my wife first got together, that was one of the things. We weren't talking about real estate. Like, one of the things we connected on originally was wanting to travel. She hadn't done much traveling as a kid, and I didn't do any. That was one thing that we both decided that as a couple, we were going to find a way to do cool stuff. And so real estate and travel, as you know, go hand in hand. So it's been really cool that we've been able to do some pretty exciting trips and work it into our lifestyle.
Amazing. So for those listeners that don't know about you, I believe you were on episode 8.
Early on.
About your story, yes. So can you give kind of just a brief intro about how you got started in real estate, why Boise, Idaho, and everything you guys are doing now?
Sure. Really, Boise, this is where I grew up. I'm one of the 5 people who grew up here. So I've been here forever, and I just happened to start investing here. And I kind of did it almost on accident. The first house I bought was a fixer because that's what I could afford. And I ended up keeping it as a rental. Just, I wanted to try it. I didn't know nobody who was doing it. And it went terribly wrong, as we've talked about before.
Wonderful, as it usually does.
Yes, and I learned a ton, and I thought, well, I can do a little bit better. And so we just my wife and I kind of just started repeating that process and getting a little better every time, making fewer mistakes, but still more and more mistakes. And honestly, I've been doing it for 25 years, and I know you're in the same boat. We do lots and lots of deals, and I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes, but they're getting fewer and far between, and it's opening up my schedule a little bit because I am making fewer mistakes, and now I can go out and do other stuff rather than be hands-on solving problems I've created.
Wonderful. And your background, right? What was kind of that moment for you that you got into real estate? I know we've talked about this previously, but I think it is important before we segue to travel.
Sure. Well, I went to school to be a teacher, and as you know, teachers don't make a ton of money, and it was never my expectation to make a ton of money, but a lot of teachers do side gigs in the summer. And so I just kind of thought, well, I'll just be a teacher, and in the summers I'll buy a house and fix it up and flip it or do something like that. And so that first house that I told you that I kind of made a mess on, my wife and I sat down, we kind of went over the things that went right and the things that went wrong. And even though everything went wrong, we still ended up making money on it. And so we both kind of thought, well, geez, if we could do a little bit better, having done this poorly and still made money, there's got to be a better way. And so we both kind of agreed that we were just going to jump in and try to do more of it. And we house hacked a few times, and we're always looking for fixer-uppers back in the day. And we always did burrs. We never really were into flipping or anything like that. And it kept getting easier and easier. And then it got to the point where our portfolio had grown enough. We weren't raking in the dough or anything like that, but we had enough passive income that it was about the same what we were making in our day jobs. And my wife quit first. We had a kid. And so she stayed home with him, and she then had more time to focus on it. And as you very well know, if you're excited about something and you have all of your time and energy focused on that thing, it kind of blows up. And so after about, 18 months or so of her just focusing full time on that and kind of growing what we were doing, she pulled me aside one day and was like, I need some help. And I quit my job, and then it's gone gangbusters since then. It's been great.
Wow. Wonderful. Okay. So fast forward to now, You guys have how many investment properties?
Personally, we have 20, 22 doors, something in that range. Okay. We're no Ryan Weimer. We're not doing 10 deals a month, but we typically do a deal or two a year on our own, and sometimes we'll 1031 something, but we have somewhere around 20 right now. And then we have a property management company, and we're lucky enough to work with you on quite a few of those, and we manage somewhere in the range of 325 doors. We have a really great small staff that manages a lot of the day-to-day stuff that are just killer at what they do, and they've really kind of changed the game for us, that we're able to scale a little bit and not be doing the day-to-day. And so we've been really lucky we can keep things moving, and we can travel for a few weeks and not have to worry about it. And we have really good people who love what they do and feel like they're part of a team, and they're supported. So yeah,
incredible.
So on top of that, I'm a real estate agent too. So I have a small real estate team. we do a bunch of deals with investors, and then the ones who do buy and hold, then we manage properties for them as well.
Incredible. So shameless plug. Corby and I have done a lot of business together, and there's a reason why. Corby is an exceptional agent. I think he's the best in the Valley personally.
Thank you.
And I've worked with a lot of people. So if you are looking to get started in real estate or invest in the Boise area, Corby's definitely your guy to reach out to. So we will include your contact info into the show notes. But let's talk what we came here to talk about.
Let's do it.
Which is, Heather, you guys have been married how long?
Actually, when we just got back from our trip, we had our 20th anniversary on this trip.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you did it in beautiful
New Zealand. Yeah.
Okay. And 3 young boys.
Yep.
What are their ages?
They are 12, 9, and 8 right now.
So why is travel so important to you?
Well, first of all, when I was a kid, we didn't go anywhere. We had my dad had a brother in Reno, so we'd go to Reno every couple years and see him. My mom grew up in North Idaho in a little town called Orofino, and so we'd go up and see her parents every couple years. And then I had an aunt that lived in San Bernardino, and so we'd go see them every couple years. Those are the 3 places that I had been when I was 18 years old. I'd never been on an airplane.
Wow.
I'd never been anywhere east of Boise, really. I'd gone a little bit north, a little bit west. And that was pretty much it. And I remember having vivid memories as a kid. I've told you this analogy kind of before, sitting in school and them talking about the Statue of Liberty. And in my mind, the Statue of Liberty might as well have been on Pluto. Like there was no chance that I was ever going to be there to see that thing.
Yeah.
Same thing, like the Eiffel Tower or
Sure.
the Colosseum in Rome. Those things were like imaginary things to me. And the idea that I might be able to like see those things and touch them, it never even occurred to me. But I always was interested in the idea of getting out and experiencing cultures and food. And I joke with you a lot about like, I want to try a donut in every country in the world, that kind of stuff. Getting out and meeting different people with different perspectives who live life differently and trying new things. It's really interesting to me. So I've always wanted to do that. And Heather's always wanted to do that. And so we decided we were going to find a way.
Amazing. And when did that become a reality for you guys? Because I think the thing that holds people back, which you just shared about like, might as well have been on Pluto. There's this gap of where you think like, oh, I can't afford that, or I can't do it. I can't get time off work or whatever it is. Like, what was the moment for you guys where you actually started thinking this might be possible? Maybe we could travel.
Well, to bring it back a little bit, when Heather and I were dating, I didn't know this at the time, but she was kind of testing me because she always wanted to travel. And there was one time where she brought up like, it'd be really cool to go on a Caribbean cruise. And she had never been to that part of the country. And I'd never been like to Florida or anything like that. So I was like, yeah, that would be pretty cool. And so I kind of started researching. I had no idea how much a cruise costs. I thought that was for rich people.
Yeah.
And so I started researching and back in the day, you still can get cheap Caribbean cruises, but back then we could do a Caribbean cruise for a week with like all the taxes and everything paid for like $350 or $400 or something like that.
Cool.
And so I found one and I came and I was like, we could do this one. And it was during a time that we both could get time off work. And she was like, okay, well, why don't you book it? And so I went and booked it. And I came back and I was like, well, here you go. And she was like, you really did that? And I said, yeah. And she I guess like her thing was like she'd always wanted to travel and do that kind of stuff, and she didn't believe that I was actually going to pull the trigger. Like she had dated other guys that were kind of like, yeah, someday, sure, whatever. And so I went out and actually did it. And so we went on this cruise, and then we just decided like we're going to make it happen. And so earlier, when we were doing our deals and screwing everything up and not making that much money and working as teachers, we were just doing what we could. So we did that cruise, and that was kind of a fun way for us to dip our toes in together. But then after that, actually, I guess it was the first bigger trip we went on was our honeymoon.
Yeah.
We did a Mediterranean cruise, and we went to Europe for 3 weeks. I think we were there for 3 weeks. So we did, Spain, we did Barcelona and Basque Country, and this like 8 or 10 day Mediterranean cruise. And that was our first. She'd been to Europe one other time. She had a friend that she grew up with that lived in Basque Country. So, but for me, that was huge. And just seeing that it wasn't that big of a deal, and like the language barrier wasn't that big of a deal, and people were willing to help, and they were kind, and it made it easier to think like, oh, we could do more of this, and we could experiment a little bit more.
I love that. I think cruises, I've personally only been on a river cruise. We did one in Egypt, and we'll get to our favorite places and all that. But I think cruises are a great stepping stone, right? Because you get to see a lot of places in a short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
you're traveling while you're sleeping. So
and you can test them out. And even though cruises are a little bit more expensive now, they're not crazy. You can still do a week-long cruise with everything included for a few $100 a person if you don't, if you stay in one of the cheaper rooms and stuff. And that's what we do. We do everything on the cheap. You got to keep in mind all your meals are covered, your travel's covered, your hotel is covered. You're not paying for anything else. Once you get on that ship, everything is taken care of, and you can kind of dip your toes in and see, like, I liked that city or I liked that country, and you can go back and explore more another time.
What's one thing you wish you knew about travel before that you know now?
Oh man, that's a good question. Something I wish I knew. Honestly, everything always comes back to me. I'm a super cheap guy.
Yeah.
It's so much more affordable than I think people think it is. For instance, like even going to, we just got back from New Zealand, and I read a bunch of articles and went on Reddit and was looking for stuff to do, and everybody was saying, like, New Zealand is super expensive. You got to prepare yourself. Like, a meal is going to cost you this much. Transportation is going to cost this much. And maybe my perspective is messed up, but we got there, and honestly, like, all of our meals were at least a third cheaper than what we get in Boise.
Wow.
And
why?
I don't know. I think the conversion kind of messes with people because they have their currency. There's a dollar too. It's a New Zealand dollar.
Right.
But a New Zealand dollar is only 55 cents of American dollars. And so meals there were $18 or $20, but they were, I mean, after you convert that, it's 10 or 12 bucks. And I'm talking about like a sit down meal in a nice restaurant. Plus the culture there is that they don't expect you to tip everybody for everything. And so here, if you go to Chili's, a burger and fries is $15, and then you're supposed to give somebody a $5 or $6 tip on top of that. And so when that's all done, the meals there were half what we pay here.
You know what grinds my gears?
What grinds your gears?
These like, you go to a coffee shop and they ask you to tip.
Oh my God.
And like, you go to, like, literally every checkout thing has a tip thing now, and they stare at you while you do it. Like, it has to work. I know there's a psychology behind it, and people just like get guilted into tipping.
Yeah.
But it's insane.
You know, I was just talking with somebody in our office the other day about this. I won't name any names, but there's a sandwich place downtown that's really good, but there's no counter there. You walk in and it's a room with some lockers on one side, and there's an iPad. You order on the iPad, and when your food is done, they put it in the locker, and you get a notification on your phone for which locker it's in and what the combo is, and that's it. But when you check out, it defaults to a 20% tip, and you have to unselect the tip if you don't notice. And so there's not even a human being there for you to talk to. But the expectation is you give them a 20% tip.
See, I think that's borderline criminal.
I'm not a fan.
I mean, seriously, that's like, I'll tell you, after living in London for a couple years, asking people over there, like, what do you think about the States? The number one thing that they hate, it's actually not, loud Americans or whatever this rap is. It's the tipping culture. It's absolutely insane and out of hand. They despise it. And of course, they're coming from a place where they don't tip. Yeah. So but that's the thing, right? Is they feel like it's almost a bait and switch thing, because you're like, well, it's this cost, and then you get your bill, and actually it's 20% higher, right? And when did 20%? It used to be that 20% was outstanding service, right? And then like 10 or 15% was like okay service, and tipping was more optional. Now it's like, if you're tipping less than 20%, you're a total asshole. Yeah.
We could really get into it, but there's a flip side of that where we allow people that work in the service industry to be paid. I mean, if you're a waiter right now, you can be paid in Idaho, you can be paid $3.25 an hour. Yes. And I totally get that is not a livable wage, and those people need tips. But on the other hand, if you're running a business based on your staffing costing you $3.25, you're doing something wrong.
Totally. And that whole business is completely flawed. Like, because I was a waiter in high school, and so I absolutely had to have the tips to survive. Yep. But there's something broken there that, at a sandwich shop or a coffee shop, when like you're not even getting sit down service, that they're just asking for tips.
I've come to the. Sometimes I struggle with it, but like if there's like I've seen memes and stuff going around, but like if you have to stand while you order and pick up your own food, no tip. Yeah. And so generally speaking, I'm trying to do more of that, unless like somebody's just gone way out of their way to give you good service, but it's crazy.
All right, we're going to play a quick game here, but I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask it, what percentage of Americans do you think have never left the country?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately with all that's going on with our politics. Those things kind of go hand in hand for me. I definitely do not want to have that conversation, but I'm going to guess 60%.
That's really, really close.
Yeah.
According to ChatGPT, approximately 64% of Americans have never left the country. So you were almost spot on.
But I
Wow.
thought that's too high.
6 out of 10.
That's crazy. I would like to know how many of those are somebody who flew to Cabo and were on a resort with only Americans and then flew straight back home.
Well, yeah, Mexico is the common. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. What percentage of Americans do you think don't even hold a passport?
Oh, boy. Well, if 60% have been out of the country, and that's just once in a lifetime, I would say like...
No, 64% have never left the country.
64% have never left. So holding a passport, like a current passport right now, 30%?
37% of Americans hold a valid passport, it's estimated.
All right.
So that's insane. So basically it's saying 2/3 of Americans have never left the country. Is that surprising to you, and why?
It's not very surprising to me, but I think mostly just because of the way that I grew up. Like I remember always asking my parents, like, why don't we go over here? And they just had no interest. It wasn't their thing. And that to me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't compute that like, I'm just going to stay in my town and do my thing.
Yeah.
I think there are some people who just don't have any interest in traveling. And I respect that, although it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if it's a personal preference, that's fine. I think that there's also a big percentage of people who think that either everybody hates Americans or that they're not going to be welcomed or that there's nowhere that's as good as America, which, well, that's a whole nother.
Yeah. No, I actually want to ask it. Reasons Americans don't travel.
All right. Let's see what it says.
And we can talk about these. All right. So the first one, cost and financial barriers. So let's talk about that because this really gets into the fun part of traveling, which is travel hacking, credit cards, credit card points, where you can travel for free. So I know you did a presentation with Boise Green on this recently about traveling.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody that has that financial objection of like, I really can't afford to travel right now, what do they need to do?
Oh, there are so many Facebook groups and Reddit threads about ways that you can game the credit card points thing. And it takes a little bit of effort. But
sure. What's your favorite one?
Just because of the flexibility, I like the Chase Ultimate Reward points. But I mean, there's a lot of value in other ones too. But I use those all the time because you can use them for anything. Like if you're collecting airline points, you can use those for airline miles. You can use those for flights. Sometimes you can do some transfers with the Chase points. You can do anything you want. You can do rental cars, hotels. You can do tours, VIP experiences, all kinds of stuff. And so you can just convert those into anything you want.
So these are Chase credit cards.
Yep.
So what are some of your favorite Facebook groups or websites to actually like learn about this stuff of how you can get free travel with credit card points?
There's a couple Facebook groups that I really like. There's one that's called Finance Buzz, and it's run by, are you familiar with that one?
No, I don't know that one.
It's run by this guy that he's had some involvement at some point with Bigger Pockets. I think he's a moderator or something like that. His name's Brandon Neth. Okay. But he runs that group, and it's like a very inclusive. He's also a real estate investor. So he does a bunch of burrs and flips and stuff in the Midwest. And so he has a separate page for all that stuff, but he talks a lot about the interplay between being a real estate investor and collecting all these points. And so that one's pretty cool. And then there's another one that's called 10X Travel. And that's just strictly about like credit card points and strategy, but that's like basic stuff that would work for anybody. I mean, if you have a W-2 job and you get 2 weeks of vacation a year, 10X Travel is perfect for like go on and like, I can do a free family vacation every single year just by doing these basic things.
At Offer Now Idaho, we're looking to hire A players to run our organization and help us grow our business. What's your favorite part about working at Offer Now Idaho?
I would say it's the culture. I really enjoy the people that we have here. They want to grow. They want to become better versions of themselves. They're hard charging. We're all pushing each other to be better. We're not two different teams competing on the same battlefield. We're one team practicing because we have a goal of helping 1 million people over the next 10 years. That's a big number. We can have an impact on people's lives while we're on that journey. And the work that you might do year 1 or in month 1 is going to have a positive impact on that family for the next decade. And that's huge.
The growth potential that we have, I mean, we could easily 2 or 3x here in the next few years. with what we built, the type of people that we've attracted, and the type of people that we're going to attract, this thing is headed for the moon, and we have so many vacancies, and we need your help to fill them. Right now, we have a $3,000 referral program. If you know somebody that's looking for a new role, we will pay you $3,000 once that person is hired by us and they hit their 90-day mark. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a new job or looking to change their life, shoot me a DM at Real Ryan Weimer on Instagram.
Let's get it.
I love that. I'm a big endorser of 10x Travel.
Yeah.
Because you can literally go onto 10xtravel.com and they have this like PDF of, it's pretty intense, right? I mean, this is a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's just like real estate investing.
It is absolutely a rabbit hole. But once you understand, like, it's just like anything when you start. I seriously thought this was fake. I was like, what do you mean you can get credit card points and there's got to be some hidden fees and what they charge you and whatever? No, you go apply for a credit card, you get the credit card, you pay it off in full every month. And then when you hit these minimum spend amounts, they give you a bonus.
Yep.
And you get all these free points that you can use on, like you said, on airfare, on hotels, restaurants, events, rental cars, you name it, right? What I love about 10xtravel.com is they have a tab called Best Cards, and they have a list of, like, I don't know, 20 Chase cards and all the airline cards, and then Amex and all the other providers. And they have little summaries about each card. So you can actually pick, hey, I know that I want to go, let's say you want to go on a cruise. Well, you can get a cruise card, or you can get an airline card to be able to fly to that destination for free. And so there's so many different things. You can just go on that website, look on that tab and find which one is right for you. But opening your eyes to like getting free travel and then understanding you can get as many cards as you want over the rest of your whole life. And then for most of them, especially the Chase ones, every 24 months, so every 2 years, you can close out that card, reopen the same card, and then re-qualify for those point bonuses.
Yep.
And you can do this forever. And because number of credit inquiries is only 15% of your credit score, your credit doesn't get trashed by doing this forever. So like when I heard this, I was like, why in the world would the credit cards companies offer all these free points and stuff? And the truth is they make so much money in interest, they don't care.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. They're expecting people to use the cards, forget about their payment, or not be able to make their payment, and the interest starts piling up. And so there's a downside to this. If you're somebody that maybe isn't great about planning and spending and all that kind of stuff, you could be spending a lot more in interest than your trip is worth anyway. But if you're good about paying off your bills at the end of the month and not buying things you don't need, I mean, if you have an expense coming up that you know is going to be $3,000 or $5,000, get a new credit card, put it on there, and typically, like the airline ones, I mean, there's a million different ones, but the airline ones, if you make the minimum spend, it's usually enough to do a round trip overseas for 2 people.
Yeah.
In that one credit card bonus. And so if you have a family of 4 and you do that twice in a year, you just got a free round trip flights to Europe or anywhere that you want to go. That's how we did our honeymoon. That first trip that we went on.
Yes.
We flew for free to Barcelona.
And when you compound this, especially like being a real estate investor with home renovations and the costs of all that stuff, I can't even remember the last time that I paid for a flight. Yeah. Honestly, it's been years because I play the credit card game and the credit card points. Let's go to the opposite extreme. Like what's been your favorite redemption of points? What are some crazy flight deals or crazy travel deals that you've gotten?
Well, we almost always pay cash for flights.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who are really like sticklers about their value for points, and a lot of the ways people get really high value for points is doing first class flights. I've got 3 kids and they come everywhere with us. First of all, I'm not wasting first class points they don't care. They don't, if they have a screen on the back of the seat, they're good. And I want to do more anyway. I want to do more trips. And so we don't always get the best value of our points. And we subscribe to going.com, which I'm sure you know, but for people who are listening, if you don't know, it's a service that goes out and finds cheap flights for you, and they email you cheap flights from your airports that you select.
Is that Scott's Cheap Flights?
Yeah, they just changed. It's going.com.
Okay.
It used to be Scott's Cheap Flights.
Yeah, they have crazy. Like, what are some of the ones you've seen?
Oh my gosh. We've done round trip flights to Europe for $300. We've done that a few times. We flew round trip to Fiji for $300 a few years ago. We went to Peru in first class, the only time I've flown first class. But I did it because it was an airfare that Scott sent out for $350 to Peru.
What? First class? Yeah. That could cost you like $7,000.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
Holy cow.
We usually pay cash for the flights just because we can get a really good deal on the flights. And then I like to use points for the other stuff, for hotels, rental cars, tours, that kind of stuff.
Got it. Okay. So how does they just go on going.com and sign up, and then they can get notifications about all the deals?
Yeah. So Going, it's actually pretty cheap. I can't remember if it's $100 or $200 a year. It's one of those two for an entire year. And you can just name you could put down every airport in the country if you wanted. And you can give them criteria. And then as deals pop up for those airports, they just send you an email. And so being in Boise, as you know, are well aware, it's hard to get in and out of the country from Boise because it's not an international airport. So I have every international airport with some exceptions. And I don't have Spokane or anything.
Sure.
The bigger airports, like from the Rocky Mountains west. So Phoenix and LA and San Francisco and Portland and all that kind of stuff. So I just get notifications for all those for anywhere. You can say like, I only want to go to these places. I've said I want to go anywhere. And I probably get somewhere between like 2 and 6 notifications in a day. And every once in a while there's one that pops up that I'm just like, whoa.
So the points world, what's one thing you didn't know about points before that you know now?
Honestly, like how easy and versatile it is to get them. When I first started this, if you look at like the point redemptions you get for buying a flight from the airline, like their own points thing, you'll be like, I'll never earn enough points to go on a flight.
And that's because every year, I remember my wife, Julia, she probably won't listen to this, but actually she will listen to this because it's about travel. But she would always view points as like kind of this like monopoly money. Mm-hmm. But really, they're their own currency, right? And they have real value. I mean, you can exchange them for dollars and get a check.
Yeah, you can.
But depending on what you buy with them, there's different multiples. And like, obviously, like if you go with a Chase Ultimate Rewards portal, you get 1.25 or 1.5x on certain things. Anyways, you're totally right. If you're spending through the airlines, like if I earn a United frequent flyer mile or a Southwest frequent flyer mile, every year they go and devalue those by like 10%. Right. And so it's almost like the devaluation of the US dollar. Those points become worth less and less and less every single year. So the nice thing about the Chase points is you can transfer them to like all the other airlines and all the other hotels. So they're kind of like this universal money.
Yep.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah. And one other thing to keep in mind is that most of the airlines, they have flat values as far as points go for routes. And so if they have a route from Atlanta to London that's 40,000 points, with a few exceptions, that's going to be 40,000 points no matter what the cash value of that flight is. So sometimes that flight might cost you $400 and sometimes it might cost you $2,500, but it's always going to be 40,000 points. And so that's why a lot of times we pay cash for those flights, because if I want to go on that route and I can pay $300 or $350 or 40,000 points, then I'm going to pay cash every time. If the time I want to take that flight, it's a $2,000 flight, then maybe I'll use the points. But we're generally just like, we'll go, if we find a really good deal to some place we've never been, it sounds interesting, we're going to go. And so it's just a matter of like finding the deal for us. We're not trying to find a certain route.
And you can spend hours and hours researching and looking the different combinations and transfers and all these things. Yep. I will say another really good website is thepointsguy.com.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool resource. Not only to compare, they kind of have like a TripAdvisor element to them as well, where they review like long haul flights. And there's people that get really into the weeds of like, I want to fly this certain type of airplane
in a specific seat
on the plane. You know, that's pretty wild.
Yep.
The Points Guy has this cool table that they release, I think, monthly, and it actually shows you what the current value of every currency of points is. Oh. So they tell you like what is one United frequent flyer mile worth compared to one Marriott point, right? And so like maybe a Marriott point is worth 0.7 cents per point, or one United mile is worth 1.3 cents per point. And so once you know that, you can log in and you can say, okay, 40,000 miles of United miles for the flight. Well, what is 40,000 times 1.3 cents? That's going to be the cost of the flight. And then you can compare that versus the cash number. And so then you can see, is it actually more expensive with points or better to use points on it?
I'm going to check that out right away. I've been on Points Guy a lot, but I've never seen their.
Okay, yeah, it's called What Are Points and Miles Worth?
Okay.
If you just Google What Are Points and Miles Worth, that's a cool thing. So I check that monthly when I'm making these kind of decisions, because especially so like, and we'll get into destinations, but Julia and I just booked a trip to Cape Town, South Africa, and then we're also going to do Istanbul, Turkey on the way back. We're going to stay. We usually like to stay in an Airbnb most of the time, and then we do like a hotel for like the last 2 nights and or 3 nights of the trip, and we usually like ball out on the
Yeah.
last couple nights of
I've
the
seen
trip.
some of the pictures.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this time we used Marriott points for our stay in Istanbul, and we're staying at like the nicest place ever. But the reason we could do that is because I saw it was an absurd cost per night at this hotel, even for Istanbul, which is cheaper than most places. But I want to say it was like $800 per night cash. But because it was only 50 or 65,000 Marriott points a night, it ended up being like only $300 in points per night.
Oh my gosh.
Versus $800 in cash.
Yeah.
And so you can do these things where you can like totally game the system and get the most value for your points and your dollars if you really want to get nerdy with it, which you can.
Yeah.
So Julia and I play 2-player mode, which I like 10X Travel calls it that,
Yep.
where basically you apply for a card, and then as you get approved and you hit that bonus, then your spouse can get a card and hit that bonus. What's Heather's level of buy-in?
It's funny because it's a lot like how we started with real estate. She was
Okay.
like, she was like, this seems messy. I don't want any more credit cards. And I'm not interested in doing that. And so the first couple times we went on trips and like I got free flights or free hotels or whatever like that, she was like, oh, yeah, this isn't so bad. Maybe it can work. And now we're to the point where I'll just apply for cards for her, and I'll just be like, hey, card's coming, and this is what the minimum spend is. And she'll just be like, all right, you take care of it and just figure everything out. So
Yeah.
she used to give me kind of a hard time about it, but now we do so much stuff on points and we do so much stuff for free that she definitely thinks that I'm a points loser, a nerd. But she's just like, you do your nerdy thing and I'll go on that trip. So she just leaves it up to me, which is fine.
There's all kinds of crazy, I mean, in those Facebook groups especially, I know you and I have joked about this before, but it's like, it's almost like the people that, want to use 1 square of toilet paper to save money, where they're like, no, I'm not going to exchange my points for 1.2x because there's a website that has 1.21x.
Right.
And I'm going to, what are some of the funny things that you've seen in those groups?
It's just there to me. There are people who will not get on a flight unless they're in first class, and to me that's completely insane. Don't get me wrong. First class is great, but to me the expense of actually paying for first class is craziness. If I know you're flying back and forth a lot and you're doing it alone, I would probably fly first class if that were the case, but I want to do more trips. And so like, it's funny in those groups, I would say a good third of the people will just tell everyone that they're idiots if they're not flying first class everywhere they go, because that's the only reason to do points.
Here's the thing. Like when I was an engineer with ASML, I would travel all over the world like 70% of the time. And so I racked up an insane amount of not only miles, but like, what is it called? The airline status. So I was 1K on United for a few years. And with 1K on United, you get free upgrades internationally to first class. And so that was my first exposure ever to first class. Was like, I was the same kind of person. I was like $8,000, $10,000, $5,000 for first class. Like, what is that hourly? Like on a flight to Europe, it's like $1,000 an hour. It's insane.
It is.
Right. And so that was the only way I got to experience it. And what I noticed was like the benefit was that I maybe got to sleep a couple more hours. And so I would wake up and I would still feel pretty shitty, right? On these long haul flights. But if I had spent that in cash, I'd be $8,000 poorer. And I get it. There's levels to this, and there's people where like $8,000 isn't a thing for them. But I'm like, for me to spend that much in cash or even points, I would so much rather ball out at a sweet hotel that I'm actually going to spend like multiple days in and get that experience than do that. So
I totally agree. That idea of taking a flight like that, you're going to be tired. You're going to be jet lagged no matter what. There's no level of expense like that you'd think, at least for me, that I'd be like, oh, that was worth it. I can't really sleep on airplanes very well anyway. I would much rather just do more trips and like you said, like spend it somewhere else, go on a really cool tour, stay in a really nice hotel or something like that.
Yeah. But here's a tip or trick if you are into that and you really want to find like the best first class deals. If you're flying on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Saturday, those have the best deals for first class and the best points options typically as well.
Cool. That's a good one. And
if you have frequent flyer status, those are also the best days where you can get free upgrades because there's just less people traveling on those days. So if you can, maneuver your trip a lot of times like leaving on a Saturday instead of leaving on a Friday, or leaving on a Saturday instead of a Sunday is oftentimes the best way to get those first class ones.
I just booked a trip for me and Clark, my youngest, and we're leaving on a Saturday and coming back on a Tuesday because the price was half what it was the rest of the week.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about some of your favorite places to travel?
Oh,
How many
man.
countries have you been to now?
I think 22, something in that range, 20 or 22, something like that. And our kids have been to almost all of them too. There's so many cool places. Like everything's just, so many places are just different and they can be cool in their own unique way. We talk about this a lot in our family. Like, what was your favorite mountain destination? What was your favorite beach destination?
Yes.
And your favorite city? And I don't know, as far as cities go, I love Paris and I love Rome. I think those are both really fun cities where the people are nice, transportation is great, it relatively feels safe. I mean, there's lots of scammers, like travel scammers out there,
Sure.
but those are places that like you could infinitely explore new neighborhoods and new things and new places. They just go on for so long and there's so much history that it just feels like a place that you could just be forever and never experience the same thing twice. I will say, I'll give a more unique answer for
Sure.
that question in the opposite way. One of the funnest places I've ever been, and I mean, I guess it's a city. There's this little town in Peru called Iquitos, and it was very unique. For one, it's right on the Amazon River. It's kind of the access for the Amazon River in Peru, but I didn't know this until we went there. It's the largest city in the world. There's no road access. 500,000 people, and there's no roads that leave there. You can't drive there. You have to either take a boat or a plane.
What? Really?
It's insane.
That's wild.
So
yeah.
there's a lot of people there, but it's almost like a third world country because it's hard to get goods
Yeah.
and that sort of thing there. And so it was really interesting. Like there's basically no cars. Everybody is riding like a crazy motorcycle that their great grandfather built and they've just toyed around with for their entire lives. And all of them, there's a lot of people there that have like homemade sidecars and that's like Uber there. You just ride in the sidecar of somebody's little motorcycle. Almost all the streets, even in the middle of the city, were dirt. And it was a super unique place. All the people were kind. The food was great. It was really cheap there. They have like a farmer's market or produce market like right on the Amazon River in the middle of town that like had some unique stuff. It was I would go back to there in a heartbeat.
Wow, cool. Okay. I've never been to Peru. So.
Yeah, it was funny. We had like a really cool experience on the Amazon River for a few days, and we had no cell service or anything like that. But when we were coming back into Iquitos, we had booked an Airbnb. There was like 3 Airbnbs in the whole town, and we had booked one of those Airbnbs like a couple weeks before we left. And when my phone came back online, and we were kind of like pulling back into the, I would say port, but it was like a little wooden homemade dock behind somebody's house, basically. We were pulling into there, and my phone came back on, and I had a notice from Airbnb, and the woman who ran the Airbnb was like, "Sorry, I have to cancel your reservation. Half of town doesn't have power, and we don't know when it's coming back. It might be a week. It might be 2 weeks. I don't know." And so we had nowhere to stay, and we're supposed to be here for a couple days. And so Heather was having like a minor panic attack.
Yeah,
we had
I'm
these 3 little
sure.
kids. We're
Yeah, holy crap.
in this unique little town. And so the guy that drove the boat for us back from this place that we were, I told him, he was like, "Come with me." And we jumped in he had a friend that had like a van, and he just drove us all over town to a bunch of different hotels and took us into the hotels, and they were all full. But he finally found one, like negotiated a room for us at one of the places, and just like really kind people, super helpful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's a highlight.
That was really cool. So yeah.
I love how you kind of mix it into, or I guess categorize it into like favorite mountain place, favorite beach place,
Yeah.
favorite jungle place. My parents, when they travel, they tend to, or my dad definitely, he just likes to go near a beach and just like lay by the beach.
Yeah.
That's like his version of traveling. So they only go to like island or tropical destinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of traveler are you? Do you like to be adventurous and go see a bunch of stuff? Do you ever just like sit on the beach and don't do anything?
I have a hard time just sitting around.
Okay.
I love beach vacations too, though, but I want to be somewhere where we can like snorkel and kayak and that kind of stuff. I'm not the type I'm just going to sit on the beach and read a book or something like that. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
But I like it all. You and I have talked about this a lot. We have a camp trailer that we take all over the West, and so we do a lot of camping and exploring. We go to a bunch of national parks every year. Love to go hiking and all that kind of stuff. But I love cities, and I'm kind of a foodie. I love like trying all the local food and that kind of stuff. So I like going to cities because there's tons of options and that kind of stuff and history and all that and architecture. And then, like I said, the beach stuff. We've done some really cool beach vacations where you just like walk out of an Airbnb and you can snorkel with sharks. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing too.
Yeah. I tried to get you to go skydiving in Queenstown in New Zealand.
Never gonna happen. No. We watch people skydive. But
Okay.
No, I don't get joy out of the possibility of dying. That just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. How about Fiji? What did you think of Fiji?
Fiji was awesome.
Yeah. I remember you saying like the locals just like welcome you guys in and
Oh,
there's
yeah,
that
yeah.
whole vibe.
Yeah, I'll tell a couple of those stories.
Yeah.
Remind me, have you been there?
No.
Okay. So one, I think we talked about this. It was 5 or 6 years ago we went to Fiji. But just as a reminder, there back in the day, I gave you a referral for some credit card. I can't remember what it was. And right before we went on this Fiji trip, I got the bonus for referring you. And we used that bonus to stay in like a beachfront hut at this resort, this all-inclusive resort in Fiji. And that was thanks to you and this credit card.
Oh, I love that. Well, before you tell your story, that's a great quick tip here, right? Like when you get a card, you can send a referral link for somebody else to sign up for the card, and then you get even more bonus points when they sign up. I love it. Okay.
Yeah. So this one referral that you and I did back in the day, it was a really good redemption. But there was 5 of us, and we got a beachfront room in this resort in Fiji, all inclusive for that one referral. I think we were there for 4 or 5 nights or something.
Incredible.
Like that. So
for free. I think this is important to emphasize, right?
All of our meals were covered. They had a kids club there, and so a guy would come get our kids and take them on little adventures every day.
Think like you're one credit card away and just using points from a beachfront villa in Fiji with your family, which I want to hear these stories, but I'm sure it was a life-changing experience for you guys.
It was so much fun. But by like you were talking about, there was a little town that was by this resort that we're at, and so we took a bus. Man, there was so many cool things. Anybody who's listening to this, if they're interested, if I ever meet up, let me show you the video of this bus ride we went on. It was just so that there was all these people commuting to and from work on this bus, but it was like the biggest party I have ever seen. It was like a Thursday afternoon. So we were waiting on the side of this highway out in the middle of nowhere in Fiji, and the guy from the hotel told us, take this bus and you go over here. We got onto the bus, and like there was music blasting. People were dancing on the bus before we got on there. Like there was already a party happening.
Like what time of day?
It was like a Thursday at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. It was all like red lights, and there's like all of this like decoration hanging. It was like a public bus, all these decorations hanging from the roof, and people were just having a party in there. And I had read that Fijians, like the natives there, like love white people. Like they're fascinated with white people. So we get on this bus. We're the only white people on this bus. And immediately, like, people aren't talking to me and Heather. They're like picking up our children and hugging them and passing them back and forth, like all over. Like we didn't know where they were half the time. But I just see somebody stand up in the back of the bus, like hugging one of my kids and dancing with them and pass them off to somebody else. And it was so cool. And we went to this little town. It was like a 20-minute ride or something like that. And we were going there with the intention that there was a market there. We were going to go to the local market and then maybe grab some dinner or something like this. But it was such a little village that I had no idea that everything shut down at like 4:30 in the afternoon. The restaurants are shut down. The market's shut down. So we got there and we were there for like the last 20 minutes of the market, and then everything was shut down. And so we just thought like, well, we'll just kind of roam around and head back to the resort a little bit later. So we were walking down these like little residential roads, just kind of checking the area out. And on several occasions, people came out of their house and picked up our children and like hugged on them and walked them back to their house and were like showing them off to other people, not even talking to me at all.
Wow.
Not like, oh, do you mind if I hug your child? Nothing like that. Just like, I didn't even exist.
Was Heather freaked out by that?
No, honestly, because everybody was they were so nice. It wasn't like they weren't trying to be rude or ignore us or anything. They just were fascinated by these little blonde kids. And they were genuinely like loving on them and being sweet and kind. And, they would come back and be like, your children are so beautiful. And we would talk to them.
Wow.
They were so nice.
Total strangers.
Complete strangers. I think I've told you this story before, but in that same little town, as we were getting ready to head back to the resort, some guy walked out of his shop. He had a little shop there and immediately started speaking English to us. And where are you from? And usually we just tell everybody U.S. because they don't know where Idaho is. And they've certainly never heard of Boise. And he was like, oh, where in the U.S.? And we were like, oh, we're in this state in the Northwest.
Yeah,
what
you've
state?
never heard of it.
Yeah, Idaho. And he's like, oh, yeah, Idaho. What city in Idaho? And we were like, oh, from Boise. He's, oh, I've heard of Boise before. I used to live in Seattle. Like, I worked at this company in Seattle for a little while, and I travel around the Northwest. And so he had a good idea. And so we talked to him for a few minutes, and, why are you guys doing in this little village? And we told him, like, we thought we could come and grab some dinner, but we didn't know, like, the culture here, that everything's shut down. And he was like, oh, my friend owns the best restaurant in this town. Let me make a call for you. And he, like, went into a shop, and he came out a couple minutes later. He was like, come with me. And we walked down the road, knocked on the door of this restaurant that his buddy owned, and he comes walking up. He opens up the restaurant for us, and he was like, whatever you want, and made us this meal. Like, the restaurant was closed, locked the door behind us, but just let us sit there, and made us this amazing meal. And we were the only ones there. It was such a cool experience.
Wow.
I can't tell you how many times that we've just had people just open up their homes or their businesses, and just so many kind people out there that want to share their town or their city or their culture or their cuisine. Yeah. It's really fun.
Where do you think that stigma comes from of, like, people, being annoyed by Americans? Or, like, I know we mentioned earlier, we talked about one of the reasons people don't want to travel is because they're afraid they're going to, like, not be welcomed, or, they're going to be like,
I'm not sure where that really comes from. I think a lot of it is our own biases. Americans have been told for so long that America's the best and we have this freedom, there's no other country like it, that we just assume that everywhere else is not like it and everybody's jealous of us.
Yeah.
And that's not at all the case. And I love America, and it's provided all kinds of opportunities for us, but there are people who live in the UK or in Switzerland or in Australia that think Australia is the greatest country in the world, and they're the most free. And that everyone is jealous of them, and that America couldn't possibly be as good, or if they're even thinking about America. You have to keep in mind that for the most part, unless you're like in the Ukraine or something right now, most people think where they live is probably the greatest place in the world.
Of course.
And that they have it pretty good, or that, so
that's tribal instincts too.
Yeah.
But I think for me personally, you don't get that kind of perspective without travel. Right.
100%.
And so, like, you go to Africa and you see the kind of joy that people have with nothing. And it completely changes how you look at what you have in your life and what you don't have and what you complain about. And I think that that's the most rewarding part, especially as you're raising a family and bringing them up in the world. I mean, your kids have how many more experiences and years worth of knowledge and, like, how to treat people and, like, just understanding the world as a whole and perspective that I think leads to actually genuinely more happiness.
Man,
right?
I hope so.
Because, but because you start focusing on what you do have instead of what you don't have. And I really think that travel is it's just like the easiest thing to do there, but it is uncomfortable, right? When you're standing in Peru and your Airbnb cancels and nobody speaks English. I mean, there are moments like that. I mean, personally for us, we were in Cape Town in South Africa, one of our favorite places in the world. It's like basically like San Diego, but just in Africa. And so we love it there. We're heading there for a fourth time this year.
That's awesome.
But you're not supposed to walk around there at night. And so what did we do? Well, of course, we thought, well, it's just our hotel's just 2 or 3 blocks away. We started walking from our restaurant back to the hotel at night. And we almost got mugged. Like, a guy came up to us and scared the hell out of us and said, give me your money or else I'll pull out a knife. And so we just, like, basically ran back to the hotel and made it. There's stuff like that happens, but you could go places in the States that are unsafe, and that same kind of stuff happens. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and just be smart and use common sense. And I have found that most places, unless it's like on the do not travel list, right, that the government puts out, are generally very safe.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially, like, all of Europe is essentially safe. So,
well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm on a bunch of travel forums and stuff too, and a lot of them are international, and Americans are a very small portion of the people that are commenting on there. And there was a thread I was on a couple months ago, and I had never really thought about it this way before, but it was like, what countries would you never visit because of fear of safety? And there were so many people that said I would never go to the USA. And
the U.S.?
Yes.
Wow.
They would never go to the U.S. And I was like, how crazy. I mean, I'm sheltered. I live in Boise, Idaho, right? But I was like, that's insane, because even in the U.S., like, there's no city in the U.S. that I would be like, I'm not going there. I would go anywhere. But so I started, like, asking questions like, why would you say that? And I commented a few times asking people for clarity, and they were like, they live in places where, nobody has a gun, or you have to, you have to be, like, high license and all this. And there's very little violence. And they were like, well, there's these mass shootings all the time in these touristy areas. And I kind of, at first I was like, these people are idiots. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But I stepped back and I started thinking about it, and I was like, if I had never been to the U.S. and I heard the news that comes out of the U.S., I might feel that same way too.
That's 100% a thing. Like after living in London for a while, I'll get asked all the time, like, what's happening there? I saw that, and I'm like, what? Like, you know what I mean? And so it totally is a lot of times a media-driven agenda. And it's unfortunate because the clickbait headlines, unfortunately, fear sells. And of course, yes, there are mass shootings, but like, it's more of like the access to information now that feels like it's happening like every single day in the U.S., right? And it's not.
Yeah, it's funny. I just thought of a fairly recent story. You were talking about almost getting mugged in Cape Town, but this one was kind of comical. I don't think I told you this, but we just went to Europe last year, and we were in Vienna, and we did a day trip to Slovakia, which it's like a 45-minute train ride to the capital, Bratislava. And we were thinking about staying there for a few days, but it worked out, so we just were going to do this day trip. For the record, I don't speak any Slovakian, but Google Translate is your friend, right? It's the coolest thing. Yeah. So we're in Slovakia. We just spent a day like going around there and you know, touring and checking stuff out and eating some good meals and that kind of stuff. Well, right across from the train station, there's a little market, and we were there like 45 minutes early, and I was like, I'm going to grab a snack for the train. So I went into the market and walked around. I ended up not getting anything and left, and we're in the crosswalk crossing back over to the train station, and I felt somebody tugging it. I had like a little backpack on, somebody tugging I turned around, and there was this guy like pulling at me. And it's not terribly uncommon in Europe. Like by the train station, there's people who, you know, there's pickpockets and that kind of stuff. So I just like turned around and shoved the guy. And a lot of times that's all it takes. Like they're just like, oh, somebody's going to fight back. I'm going to wait for a little old lady or something like that. So I shoved the guy, and then we came across the street, and I was walking up to the train platform. Same guy like had run back up and I shoved him again. And like we kind of raced to get past the ticket booth. And I was like, oh, that's the end of that, right? So we're waiting on the platform, and I looked like 100 yards away. Two guys, this guy and another guy, like running full speed at me, and I'm on the train platform. I don't know anywhere to go. And they get over and they start like yanking at my backpack, and they're yelling at me in Slovakian. And it took us like 3 or 4 minutes of like a really tense, like I'm pushing these guys away, and like Heather's yelling at them, and the kids are freaking out.
I'm sure.
They were security at the grocery store, and they thought that I put something in my backpack. And so I just took my backpack off. And
they thought you were a shoplifter.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I just opened my backpack, and they're like, sorry. And they just walked off. But it was, you know, a language barrier.
A total misunderstanding, though.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
funny. Okay. What are some of your other maybe lesser known places that you visited? Because we always joke about like the common Mexico trip, right?
Yeah,
which I think that's a great first step for people that have never been outside of the country is to go to Mexico and do that. But you certainly don't get in the experience, I think. Like if you're looking for a place to just chill out and relax, I think that's great. Cabo has exceptional weather. There's a lot of cool places in Mexico. I've been to many of them, right? What about some lesser known places?
I would say the Basque Country in Spain, and it bleeds over to France. There's some really cool little towns there, and they're much lesser known. And a lot of people don't know. Like they have their own culture, they have their own language, they have their own cuisine. They don't, even though it's theoretically part of Spain, they consider themselves a sovereign nation. And there's just some beautiful spots over there. Probably the coolest, one of the most beautiful towns I've ever been is San Sebastian, and in Basque Country. Actually, that's the Spanish name. They would be annoyed at me calling it. I think it's Donostia.
Okay.
Is the Basque name, but that all of Basque Country is really cool. It's like rolling hills and green, and like there's tons of vineyards out there, and there's these little teeny villages where you can just pop in and everything is cheap and the people are kind. It's really cool. I do love Basque Country, especially Donostia is really cool. I haven't been there forever. I would love to go back there. What else? When we travel, we do a lot of like the big city stuff, but one of the things that we try to do is always like get out of the city and stay for a few days in a little village or something like that.
That's where you get the real authentic experience, right?
Yeah. We stayed a couple years ago in a little Swiss village at the base of the Alps called Lauterbrunnen.
Yeah, I've been.
Yeah. I think we've talked about that before.
It's breathtaking. It looks like it's out of a fantasy world, right?
I mean,
it's like a postcard.
The mountains are just so bold, and the valley is so narrow, and it's green. One of the coolest things that I've ever done, I've done lots of cool stuff, but something I really loved about that area is this valley was so narrow. There's like a green belt that wandered through, and it's all these farms with sheep and cows everywhere, and all of these little family farms along this green belt. I'm saying this green belt because the valley is so narrow that like, if you're there, you know what I'm talking about. But they put vending machines on the street with whatever they make at that farm. And so we just spent a day wandering along this green belt, and we'd come up to a vending machine like, oh, they make cheese and wine here. And you could put a few dollars into this vending machine and get the wine that they made right there.
That's badass.
It was so cool. And I mean, some of them, it was like they made soap, or like they'd have like gloves that they knit or something like that. And you could buy them in a vending machine. So that was really cool. Lauterbrunnen was a cool little hole in the wall. I could go on all day about these little like nooks and crannies. That we
how about someplace you haven't been yet that you really want to go?
We've talked a lot about Prague. I really want to go to Prague. That's on my list. For some reason, I've always wanted to go to Georgia too.
Cool.
Eastern Europe. Yeah. I've just heard really cool things about it. I've read a little bit about it, and it seems awesome. We've done I shouldn't say very little. Asia, basically, like all of Asia. I really want to get to Vietnam and Taiwan, Indonesia. I would love to check. I've been to Shanghai once, and that's all I've experienced in Asia. And I know you've been there a bunch.
Yeah.
Probably not a great beginner trip necessarily.
No, I was about to say the first time I remember the first time I went to Asia.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where it was. It was Taiwan, and it is total culture shock.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the amount of people, the density of housing. There's no English whatsoever.
Oh, no. They're not catering to Westerners.
The smells, the things that people eat. It's not letter language. It's all symbols. I mean, like, talk about an ambitious first trip.
Yeah.
I don't think Asia is it's just like the sheer population density too. That's the thing. Like when I kept going back, it's like unbelievable how many people there are. So there's no like sense of personal bubbles or space anywhere. Right. Yeah. But that being said, I mean, if you really want to be wowed or like just go see some really cool stuff, if you're up for adventure, I think Asia is really cool.
We have some really good friends that grew up around Bombay, and they go back and see family every few years. And I'll have to introduce you sometime. They're really cool people. But it's funny, we're always like, we want to tag along on your next trip. And they're like, you do not want to go there. Like, it's the worst. And they say the same things. They're like, it's smelly, and people don't have personal space. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. I mean, like I love South Korea. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Japan's pretty up there too. Of course, you have Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia. Cambodia has Siem Reap, which is like the, really old ruins. Vietnam is really high on my list. Very, very highly recommend. Of course, Thailand is just breathtakingly beautiful. Although in Thailand, I think you need to be more careful about like where you go because are tourist traps that you just don't really want to go to. Okay. But it is insane and cheap. That's the thing about Southeast Asia in particular is you can get like a beer for $1. You know what I mean? But Koreans are so happy, so welcoming. Korean barbecue is just the best. I mean, I haven't
had legit, but I've had Americanized versions.
Yeah, I love it. I just love travel in general. So you're going to Iceland next.
Yeah, we're going to Iceland in a couple months.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been Heather's number one destination that she's wanted to go for her entire life. And actually, I know I've been talking a lot, but I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah, of course.
So we went, I'm leading up to this Iceland trip, but it's just one of the cool things about travel that I'm sure you've experienced a bunch of times. We went a couple years ago over spring break to Tahiti. That was a really cool experience I could go on forever about anyway. But one of the last days that we were there, Heather had booked this tour where we were going out and snorkeling with sharks and turtles. And then we went to this private island, and the people running the tour made us sushi, on this little private island. All on points, by the way.
For free.
Yeah, for free. So anyhow, we were on this tour, and there was this other couple there with this thick accent that were sitting next to us that I didn't recognize the accent. And so hey, where are you guys from? And they were from Iceland. And we started talking to them, and it turned out that they were in real estate too. They had owned a restaurant or a couple restaurants in Reykjavik and sold them off a couple years ago because their kids had moved out, and they were kind of empty nesters and didn't want the hustle anymore. So they sold these restaurants, and they built a little like short-term rental compound outside of Reykjavik, and they lived there, and they ran it. And so we had that in common. We were kind of talking about that. they were like on a 3-month tour all over the world. They just were going to go check stuff out. And so, where are you guys going next? And they're like, well, we're flying back to San Francisco. They'd explored the eastern United States a little bit on other trips, never really been to the West. So I was like, well, how long are you in San Francisco? And they're like, oh, I think 4 days. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's great. Where are you going after that? We're going to Las Vegas. And I said, well, how long are you in Las Vegas? Oh, I think 12 days. And I was like, have you been to Las Vegas before?
Yeah, you're not going to make it past 72 hours.
No. So I just said, I said, hey, why don't you guys spend a few days in Las Vegas? And then I said, we're a 90-minute flight away. Like, why don't you come up to Boise? You can stay in one of our Airbnbs, and we'll hang out for a couple days and just show you around. And they were like, really? And we said, yeah. So they came to Boise for a couple days. This couple from Iceland that we met for a couple hours on this trip. And we just kind of connected with them. It was really fun. And we have a little WhatsApp chat, and every couple months, we'll just check in and say hello. And so we booked this trip to Iceland, and Heather messaged them and hey, we're coming to Iceland. Can you guys help us put together an itinerary? Absolutely. So a couple days later, we all get on this group call, and we had put together like a basic idea of what we wanted to do. And then they helped us kind of flesh out the itinerary, and they're like, but you guys have to come and stay with us for 3 or 4 days. And then my brother, he works for the government, but he's the caretaker for this private island that civilians are not allowed on because it's, there's some kind of bird that's, I want to say puffin, but it's not a puffin, I don't think. There's some kind of bird that's in that area.
That nests there?
Yeah. And so he was like, I can take you onto this island and we can get a tour from my brother. And then, and so they planned out like 3 or 4 days for us. And they're like, you're just going to come, you're going to stay in one of our Airbnbs. We're going to take you all over this area. You're going to get these private, where else would you get that kind of treatment? Just from like connecting with other people who have the same passion that you do to get out and explore.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that just goes to show, like, when you get outside your comfort zone, whether it's with travel or anything, you're generally pretty amazed by what you find and the kindness in people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I can tell you personally, I've had exponentially more positive experiences from, foreigners welcoming us as Americans that I have negative ones.
Yeah.
This is what people don't understand. A lot of these cities and areas thrive off of tourism, right? And when Americans come, they know that they're spending money into their economy. They're in their restaurants, they're buying food, they're doing excursions, whatever, and they are funding their well-being and their families' well-beings. And there is definitely a mutual respect there that I find in the world, unlike a lot of times in the States where we actually tend to treat foreigners, I don't think quite as well.
Yeah.
To be totally honest.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I find a lot of times too that people like showing off their town.
Yeah.
And we've had like Airbnb hosts. And one of the tricks that we use when we travel too is one of the first things we do is we'll just go on a long, like an Uber ride or a Bolt ride and ask a million questions to the driver. And I would say at least half the time the people will they'll turn their meter off and they'll be like, let me show you this. And they'll just give us a little tour of their town because they're excited to show it off. And there's cool little nooks and crannies that they're aware of that we would never find. And so I guess that's one little tip too, is like Airbnb hosts and like Bolt and Uber drivers, they're a lot of times they're happy to see you and are really great. Like you get an inside view to their town.
Yeah.
Just by chatting them up.
Did you guys drive on the other side of the road in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah.
You have to.
Yep. Yeah. It takes a couple days for me to get used to it, but I've had some interesting driving experiences in other countries, but I've been pretty lucky so far, knock on wood. But I've driven in Ireland, which as far as I'm concerned, like that's the scariest driving in the world.
Yeah. Right on. How about some other like points and redemptions that you've used with your points?
I would say one of the things that's not directly for points, but one really great tool that a lot of people don't know exists is Google Flights. Google Flights is if you're new to like traveling and wanted to see what's out there, Google Flights is amazing. You can set notifications for like, I want to go to this place in this time frame and I'm willing to pay up to this much. And they'll send you emails when flights reach a price that you agree on. You can actually open up a map from Boise and zoom out. You just set some parameters for dates and you can zoom out on a map and it'll start dropping pins for anywhere in the world, how much it'll cost for you to go there.
Oh, that's such a good tip, right? If you're like, oh man, I only have, I'm looking for that $350 round trip flight to Europe, which that's insane, by the way. Like where in the States can you even fly for $350? But that's crazy. So let's say you're looking for a deal like that and you're like, I just want to go somewhere in Europe or insert country here, and I don't care where I fly into and out of. Such a cool tool.
Yeah, and once you get somewhere like Europe, it's really cheap and easy to get around anyway. So if your dream is to go to Paris and you can't find a cheap flight to Paris, but there's one to London, you can fly into London. You can be to Paris in a couple hours for $100.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So Google Flights is a really great tool. But as far as points specifically, there's a couple things that we do a lot. One, with the Chase points, I love, the redemptions may not be the best, but I love using that for tours because they're
Really?
it's
I've
just,
never done that.
Yeah. I mean, everywhere that you go, if you go into their portal, you can say, I'm going to be in Auckland for these dates. And then it'll just pull up a list. And in bigger cities like that, there will be 250 different things that you can do. And a lot of the like big famous things are on there, and you can do those for free using points. And to me, like that's a lot of times where trips kill you is like you go on the trip and you get there, and then all of a sudden it's like you're nickeled and dimed for the transportation and for this tour and getting into this museum and then this meal and this ice cream cone. And so you can offset that a lot. We were just talking, we just went to Hobbiton in New Zealand, and that I paid for that with points. We used points to get into Hobbiton, cool. So that was free. So I really like exchanging points for trips, not because it's the best redemption necessarily, but it feels like it kind of takes the edge off. And you can do it kind of last minute too. Sometimes when we end up somewhere and we're like, we have a free day tomorrow, I'll just go in there and say like, well, what's available nearby that we can do for free? And so we'll just book something real quick with points that way.
Yeah. What I love about it too is when I book a flight on points and then I book my hotel on points, 2/3 of a traditional trip cost is already taken care of.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I feel like I can actually go eat out at the places that I really want to go, or go see a show, which I could probably also get with points, right? But like what I love about it is it really gives you that like green light to go do the things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So example of this, Julia and I, for her birthday, I surprised her and we went away to this ridiculous, I don't think 6-star is a thing, although they'll say that in advertising, but it was the nicest hotel that I've ever been to in my life. And I've been to a lot of 5-star places around the world. It was like a half hour outside of Oxford, like an hour and a half west of London. And they had, a Michelin star restaurant in the place, and the grounds were, it was just exceptional. It was like $1,800 a night.
Oh my gosh.
To pay that in cash.
Yeah.
But going on the Chase portal, they had like some special deal where if I paid points, it was only going to be like the equivalent of $300 a night if I used points. And it was the most incredible experience ever that I would have never otherwise been able to do with my wife, And so it's stuff like that really, you have those memories and those moments.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be like, oh,
No.
I'm going to save up for that.
No, and it's I've actually never had an experience either. Like sometimes when you go kayak.com or Priceline or whatever, or Hotwire, these like discount sites, and you pay cash, you're kind of always worried that you're going to show up and they're going to be like, I'm not showing the reservation and whatever. I have never had to worry about that with Chase points or any kind of redemption.
I haven't either. I've heard of people having bad experiences like that, but when we book something on Chase, I'll just call the hotel and verify it or something or like the easy way to do it on flights. When we book something on Chase, if you have the app, you can just put the itinerary number in, and if it aligns with the records for the airline, then you're good to go.
Yeah. But like this place that I took Julia, I didn't even read the whole thing because it was such a good deal. I was like, oh, that's it. Like this is it. She's going to love it. And we had an exceptional time. But when we got there, they actually had like a printed out thing waiting for us in our room. And it said, congratulations, because you've booked through Chase Ultimate Rewards and used points for this stay, you've been upgraded to a junior suite, and you get a $100 travel or a restaurant voucher towards your Michelin star meal just because you use points. And I'm like, wait a minute, because I got this for free, I also get these extra upgrades? This is insane.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so sick.
I have seen on that Chase portal sometimes where they'll have like, we haven't done anything like that, but I have seen where they'll have like special redemption, like bonuses when you do that. It's pretty cool.
And I think part of the reason was her birthday's on the 15th of January. And so like it was either a weekend before or after, so right after the holidays.
Okay.
And so these are like the odd weekends where like nobody really wants to travel because everybody just got done traveling in the holidays.
Yep.
So these off-peak times, you can find some crazy deals.
Yeah, for sure. The one other redemption thing I wanted to mention, you asked about point redemption, that I think a lot of people don't realize is the Southwest Companion Pass.
Oh, yeah.
Being in a place where there's no international airport, like that's a huge thing. And so just so people know, I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but basically if you open up 2 Southwest credit cards at the same time and do their minimum spends, Southwest will give you a Southwest Companion Pass. And basically that means that anyone, for 2 years, anyone you want can fly with you for free. And so in order to get this Companion Pass, you open these credit cards and you get a whole bunch of points for doing that. And then on top of that, they give you the Companion Pass. And so you have enough points to go on probably 7 or 8 free trips anyway. And then you can bring someone else with you for free. And it's 2 years. It lasts for 2 years. And so Heather and I will do that and like overlap each other every other year. And that way, like a lot of the really good deals for these international flights here, at least it's out of San Francisco or LA or Chicago or something like that. And so we use the Southwest Companion Pass to get to those places. And then we fly for free using other points out of there.
So when I was first getting into points and credit cards, I remember hearing about the Companion Pass. And I remember thinking, oh, great. So you get 1 flight free.
Yep.
It's every flight.
Flight.
It's literally a buy one, get one free every single time that you purchase to whatever destination you want.
Even if you use points.
Even if you use points. So you can get it. So you can open up the credit card. You get the bonus points. You get the Companion Pass. Then you can use points to get your flights, which are also free. And then you use the Companion Pass to bring somebody else for free.
Yep. So,
and by the way, you can do this every 2 years if you play husband and wife mode, 2-player mode. You can get Companion Pass for 2 years, and then your wife can get Companion Pass for 2 years, and then you can get Companion Pass forever.
Yep.
You can just do this forever.
Because we have 2 kids, like we'll have years where we overlap and we both have a Companion Pass, and so we try to like step up our game during those years. As a matter of fact, last October there was a week where like there was 3 days off of school. And Heather was looking ahead and she was like, we should book something during that week. And so we looked and we found a really good deal on Southwest for points to New Orleans. And that's one of our favorite places. And so we're like, well, we'll go to New Orleans. So we flew to New Orleans for free using the Companion Pass. We stayed in a hotel for free using Chase points. The French Quarter is walkable, so we didn't have a car or anything while we were there. But we did like a dinner cruise for the whole family on points. That was free. We did, they have like an Autobahn museum there. We did that for free with points while we were there. And then we were there, I think, for 3 days, and then we had another 3 days, and we went to Mississippi. I'd never been to Mississippi, and so we were like, we'll just get another state in, we'll check it out. So we went to the Gulf Coast, rented a car on points for free. We had an Airbnb in Mississippi, like right on the ocean, for free. And we did a couple other things. We did a shrimp boat while we were there for free. So we did this week-long trip, and I mean, we paid for some meals while we were there, but I'll bet that entire week-long trip, flights, transportation, everything, all the tours that we did, we probably spent $750 for 5 of us. The only thing we bought was food. Everything else was free.
You know what's wild, Corby, is I talk to like a lot of my family and friends, and I tell them about this, and then they don't do it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're spending, maybe it's the too good to be true thing. I don't know.
Maybe people think it's too complicated. I'm not sure, but it's one of those things, like we talk about this with real estate all the time too. Like anybody can do this. There really isn't a lot of times people are worried about the minimum spends, and that's kind of a thing. Like to get the bonus points, a lot of times it's like $3,000 or $4,000, and some people are like, how am I going to spend $3,000 or $4,000 in a couple months? Well, what a lot of people do is they open a card and then they call the county and they just pay their property taxes for the year. That's a really easy thing to do. Your property taxes are $3,000 or $4,000. So you're going to pay those anyway. So call and pay your property taxes, and then boom, you have a free flight to Europe for you and your wife.
Can't you also buy gift cards?
You can buy gift cards too. I've done that before.
So that's a thing, right? Mm-hmm. If you're like $500 short, usually they're not that high. They're like $3,000 in the first 3 months. Yeah. A lot of them are, or something like that. But you know, if you don't have a big purchase, it's kind of hard to get there with a lot of little purchases. So you can buy gift cards. There's another cool thing that you can do to really game the system that I did when I was first starting. That I was really trying to rack up I was deep in the wormhole, you know.
Yep.
Where you can go through Chase, I think it's Chase shopping portal, and you can look up like a Lowe's or a Home Depot and see if they have any bonuses. And there used to be a thing, and you might know more about this now. I don't know.
Yeah.
There used to be a thing where like if you bought a $500 gift card at Home Depot, it would count as 5x points. And so like if I knew I was about to do a home remodel, I would literally buy like 20 $500 Home Depot gift cards and get 5x points on all those, and I would get a bajillion points.
Yep.
and then use those gift cards to fund the remodel that I was already going to do.
You can still do that. I do that all the time.
I mean,
yeah. So you get the spend for the bonus, and something you're going to do anyway. Plus the spend that you use, you get 5 times return. It's pretty cool.
wild. What other hacks?
Oh,
do you
boy.
have?
I guess to back up, you were talking about buying the gift cards.
Yes, yes.
Everybody always spends money on Amazon. Everybody buys everything they need from Amazon now. That's the thing. So if you are worried about that, you can buy an Amazon gift card and load it onto your Amazon account, and it'll just debit your purchases from there as you go.
There you go.
And so if you're spending $4,000 every 6 months on Amazon for all of your household goods, and you can't do it on your credit card in that 3 months, just buy the Amazon gift card, load it on, pay off your credit card, and then it'll just whittle away as you're spending on Amazon. So that's a good tip too.
If you really want to get next level with this stuff, I actually have a spreadsheet where I track all the cards that we have. And this is the coolest perk, I think, as a business owner is, and you know this, but you can have different businesses then. And like, let's say Offer Now, Idaho, I have a Chase Inc. preferred card. Mm-hmm. Well, then personally for Ryan Weimer business stuff, I have a Chase Inc. preferred card. Mm-hmm. And then for my holding company that has my rental properties, I have a Chase Inc. Literally, so I can get the bonus for the same card with every single company, and I can do that endlessly with every single card.
Every 2 years.
So like there's exactly.
Yeah.
So there are more cards than bonuses that I could ever achieve in my entire life.
Yeah, for sure. And we try to keep it simple. Like I only open 1 or 2 cards a year probably. And every couple of years I'll just cancel them. And then when I want some more points, I'll just open another one up. But there are some people, like if you go into those forums, that will show a picture and they'll have like 85 credit cards that are all that's not for me. But when you cycle through them, I mean, you can. I have 4 in my wallet right now, and I think that's the most I've ever had.
Sure.
I just cycle through them.
Sure. I mean, like my first house flip or a few of them, they have the 0% interest cards too. So like some of those Chase Inc. cards, you can get 0% interest for, I think it's either 12 or 15 months where you don't have to pay off the balance and there's no interest accrued at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a million ways to do it for sure.
Pretty freaking cool.
Well, I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
What's your favorite like unknown destination, a place that you've gone that you'd never heard of, that nobody talks about, that you just really love?
That nobody's heard of. People have probably heard of this, but I think a trip we did a couple of years ago, Rwanda, to see the mountain gorillas was absolutely epic. That really exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
I thought that was super, super cool. Probably most of my answers there would be Africa. Like it's just, there's something about it. Like the happiness of the people there, many of them don't have anything. And the happiness there it's just off the charts. It's super, super cool. So I'd probably say Africa. We've only been to 4 or 5 countries in Africa because a lot of them truly aren't safe, right?
Yeah.
So an African safari is very expensive, but that is some of my favorite trips have been those safaris because you see more animals in the first day. You got to go to the right spots.
Yeah.
But if you go to the right parks, like the number of animals and wildlife that you see in the first day is like what you expect to see in your entire trip.
Yeah.
And so it is insane. It's incredible.
Yeah, you've mentioned to me before that's one of your favorite things. We got to find a way to get over there and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what the boys have to be a certain age though, because you are riding in a Jeep for like 10 hours a day, right? And so
they're just a little snack for some of those animals.
I know, right? But like, I mean, we've seen like a leopard kill an impala and drag it up into a tree, and it's like not a zoo. Like it's like real life, and it's just up next to an elephant. And I don't know. I'd probably say Africa. I think Siem Reap in Cambodia is pretty darn cool. Yeah. Now it's kind of a tourist thing. Where else? Yeah, I mean, I've told you this. I think New Zealand's probably my favorite place that I've ever been.
New Zealand's pretty cool.
I just love the people and the combination of like the endless amounts of things to do and how geographically diverse it is.
Oh yeah.
You know, they have jungle, beaches, glaciers, mountains.
Yeah. In a 20-minute drive, you see all of that
I know.
stuff sometimes. Yeah. It was pretty fascinating.
The color of the lakes, the turquoise is unique. Man, it's tough to pick.
How about what's your favorite vacation destination in the United States?
Like what kind of vacation? You know what I mean?
Let's go a city. What's your favorite city to visit?
So I'm a little bit biased. I love San Diego because we lived there. But I'll go probably New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah. To visit. I don't think Julia could definitely live there. I don't think I could live there. But to visit, I mean, there is a reason it's called the city that never sleeps.
Yeah.
Like the food that you can have in New York City is unlike anywhere in the world.
And there's everything.
Everything. You can get anything that you want. And I thought London would have that living there, but it doesn't. It has most things, but not everything. So I think to visit New York is just, now the problem with New York is it's just so crazy expensive.
Yeah.
But like the best meal of my life was in New York.
Really?
So a sushi place.
Oh, wow. Really?
Just ridiculous. Yeah.
Huh.
Ridiculous. Yeah. What about you? U.S.
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
I love New Orleans. New Orleans, it just, the culture, it's the only place in America that they have their own language, they have their own cuisine, they have their own culture. It's like, it's sort of like a European city in America. And I just think it's really fun. The vibe, it's not the cleanest city. And if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, it's not the safest city. But like, we just took our kids there. If you're hanging out, before 10 o'clock on Bourbon Street or around there and walking around, like it's just like a party all the time, and not necessarily a debaucherous party. There's live music on the streets and people are just having fun, and there's just so much history there. Like when we just went for free, we took a ghost tour, and my kids love watching
paranormal stuff.
Oh my gosh, like those cheesy paranormal shows. They love that stuff. And so we took a ghost tour, and it's funny, Oscar, our oldest, like he's very serious about it's real, and but like in a very respectful way. He wants to respect the spirits and that sort of thing. And so the last stop on the tour, there was this one place where they're talking about that you're not supposed to walk underneath this balcony because it's bad luck, and there's these spirits that will haunt you, and like somebody had died right there. And they told us this I don't remember all the details. As soon as the tour ended, I ran across the street and walked under this balcony, and Oscar and Heather were angry at me. They were freaking out. They were angry that I cursed our family, basically. I haven't seen the results of it yet. But anyway, I love New Orleans just because it's such a unique place. The food's great. I think the people are nice. And then New York for the same thing. Those are both two cities in America that they're like nowhere else.
Yeah, I agree.
There's nowhere else in the world I've been that are like either one of those places.
New Orleans has some exceptional piano bars too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like just like the jazz thing and the music. Obviously, like you get the country thing with Nashville. But I do like the Cajun foods too, like that deep fried stuff. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Yeah.
No, I would go to New Orleans anytime. To me, like we were just talking about with Vegas. Vegas is fun for a couple days, but New Orleans is one of those places like I could go there anytime and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Lake Tahoe too, for totally different reasons. I just really like it.
I need to spend more time there. I've had like a couple quick stops there, but
yeah, you get the benefits of the lake and the mountain thing. So if like you're into skiing and whatever, you get that, and then you can go on your boat in the summer. I think that's a pretty rare combination.
Yeah,
to have that.
Yeah.
But, well, anything you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh, just if anybody out there is listening and you're interested in traveling, I don't care if you're in real estate investing or you think you're going to be a client of ours or anything. Like, I love talking about this stuff. If you're interested in traveling and want to learn, like, how can I, with whatever resources you have, how can I take my family on a cool trip? I'll meet you for coffee and talk. I love talking about this stuff and helping people strategize. So if anybody's interested in learning more about how they can do it, I'll happily chat with them about it.
Yeah. And get the damn cards and take action.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Just get your first one. I love that you brought up the Southwest Companion Pass. That's such a like tangible thing for people that are like, I want to go visit family a few times a year.
Yep.
Boom.
And there's like 7 or 8 direct destinations from Boise on Southwest that are really cool spots.
You can even go international on Southwest, can't you?
Yeah,
to like a few places.
They fly to a few places in Mexico,
like Aruba or something like that.
They do Mexico. They used to fly. We were trying to take advantage of it and missed it. But when that door opened up, they flew to Cuba for a while, and so that's pretty cool.
What about Hawaii?
Oh yeah, they do Hawaii now too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's I think just like in the last couple of years.
So can you imagine having a companion pass and going to Hawaii a couple times a year?
Yeah, for free.
For free.
Yeah, pretty
amazing.
Cool. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Corby. I know travel's a big passion of ours. It's one of our big whys on why we got into real estate and financial freedom and rental properties and all the fun stuff that comes with it. So thanks for coming on.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right.